Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road. I'm here with my daughter, Kelsey. Kelsey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
At Parkview Field, home of the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. Isn't it a beautiful setting?
Oh, yeah.
It's so much fun to be here. What we're going to talk about today, to me, is so powerful, and I'm going to share a little bit about a friend of mine. But we're going to talk about, we could say, simplify, or how to live a quiet life. I'm not sure if you were at our house. I think you were. And I got a call not too long ago, and I could not believe what I was told on the other line. And it was that my best friend from college, Jeffrey Byron Donor, had collapsed of cardiac arrest. And when you hear those words from about someone who's so young, it just you sit there and you just hit the pause button on everything, and you think, this isn't really happening. This can't be true. He not only was my best friend in college, we worked together for almost 20 years. Almost 20 years of working together. And as I processed the initial shock, I started thinking a lot about our past years together. And he had named his son Mitchell. And I ended up talking with Mitchell in just a few minutes after I got the initial call. And he told me everything that had happened, that they had dinner together as a family, and Mitchell and Marissa, his children, were on their way to an Indiana Pacers game. And they had a meal together as a family. And Marissa's son, Christopher, was there. And so Mitchell and Marissa leave to go to that Pacers game, and Jeff goes into his bathroom. I think he was going to take a shower or something, and he died. The more I thought about him and his life, the more my mind went to what Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians 4:11 and 12. And I would say it this way, and I said it this way at his funeral: in the loud world of auctions, Jeff made it his ambition to live a quiet life. And we did a lot of things in the auction business I'll share with you together. But it's loud. You know, you're multitasking all the time. You're combining buyer and seller. And in everything, you market big. You don't really market small. You market big. You make sure everyone who could conceivably ever think about buying something that you're selling would know about it. And so in the loud world of auctions, Jeff made it his ambition to lead a quiet life. And this is what Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians 4:11 and 12. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. Man, does that ever sound practical, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the way Paul wrote all of his letters. The first part of all of his letters are theological, that kind of foundation. And then the second half of his letters are practical. When you hear those words, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, what do you think about in your own life as a college student?
I think that it's so natural for us to want recognition for the good things we do. And with my personal relationship with Christ, I've noticed sometimes my struggle is that I want to make my relationship with God look the best it can for the sake of other people seeing it and knowing that that's the kind of person I am, and you know, to maybe look at my life and be like, wow, like look at all she's doing for God. And then I thought to myself, Kelsey, that's not the number one reason that you want to have a good relationship with God. I mean, ultimately, it's because you personally want to make your relationship with God strong and prominent in your life. And I often notice myself slipping up a little bit, and instead of focusing on, you know, what does God think of me? What's our relationship like? How much time am I spending alone with Him? It becomes, you know, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this so people know. And it's not always the right way of thinking. I guess I made it sound a little bit like I want to do those things so I get praise. It's not really that, but that's how I'm measuring the relationship in a way. You know, how many things can I do? That way I know that my relationship with God is strong. But sometimes I just miss out on the fact that that quiet time and that time spent alone with Him and just really focusing on what do I need to work on and asking God to work in my heart, those are the times where you grow the most.
Yeah, make it your ambition to live a quiet life. a quiet life. In many ways, the pathway up in God's kingdom is down. We need to bend the knees of our heart to Him, and then we live that out, flesh that out by bending the knees of our hearts to other people in relationships. But we get so caught up, especially in this Western culture, that the pathway up is up. And it is about me. And it's really deception. And we're not going to really help anybody as we're on that treadmill. I mean, I've had guest after guest sit where you're sitting now, and they'll say, hey, I made it all about me. And I almost lost my soul. I'm going to give 3 characteristics. We're going to break this verse down, and then I might talk a little bit about my friend Jeff on each one. First of all, I noticed that Jeff was peaceful, and this is asking us or commanding us to be peaceful. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to be peaceful. I remember the first time I met Jeff, and he walked into one of my college classes at IPFW, and he had a sleeveless T-shirt. I think it was a Springsteen. Bruce, do you know who Bruce Springsteen is?
Yes.
It was a concert shirt. He had his book bag and his Diet Coke, and I think he had cream-colored corduroys on. And I had a little bit of hair left back then. And it was in our accounting class at IPFW. And we were kind of close to each other, and my pencil accidentally brushes his cream corduroys. And I thought, and he, with that Springsteen shirt, his sleeves cut off, I kind of thought that maybe he was going to be upset. I'd never met him before in my life, never spoke a word to him in my life. And Dr. Pfaffenberger's doing his lecture and everything, and I keep looking at that mark on his pants, and I go, this is my first introduction to him. And I said, and I just point, and he looks at that mark on his corduroys, and he goes, he was so carefree. He things like that didn't bother him at all. We learned that we were both newlyweds. We were both business administration majors with a concentration in finance. And for the next couple of years, we would be inseparable. And I want to tell you what Jeff introduced me to. He introduced me to Oli's Pizza. Have you had Oli's Pizza yet?
Yes, I have.
Oh, come on, sister.
Yes, I have.
Is it great or what?
Yes.
Now, he introduced me to the double crust and lots of cheese and stuff. I ended up liking the thinner crust. He introduced me to putting potato chips on sandwiches. To have, instead of taking your bite of the sandwich and then taking a bite of the chip, he just put the chips right on the sandwiches. He put his fries on the burger, and then would eat the burger with the fries on it.
Never heard of that one.
He said it's very efficient and it's tasty.
Efficient.
He introduced, you know how I love my sleep, my rest?
Yes.
He introduced me to all-nighters. We would study all night with Joseph P. Motherwell. We'd get a room, usually in the IPFW library. They had study rooms, and you could just stay there all night. And that's what we would do, and we'd kind of lecture to each other. And, man, I learned a valuable lesson there that everybody learns differently. And so hearing and seeing things from their perspectives really helped me do better. But he introduced me to something else that was really a novel idea, and I'd never considered it prior to it. And that was reading a textbook.
Oh, gosh.
I was getting by not reading textbooks, and I couldn't understand how he knew so much of this stuff. And I said, dude, where did you get that? And he said, it was in the textbook. I go, oh. And so I thought, well, maybe I better do that. You probably never heard of this group, but he introduced me to Dire Straits. I remember riding in his Nissan, and we were on the snow-covered road, and it's when kind of the early winter, and it gets kind of slippery, and it's sort of icy, and his back end would come around, and it'd come back around the other way. And we listened to Dire Straits. That ain't working. I think I've played the song loud when it's come on before with you.
I'm sure you have.
And he was married, and so was I. And so I met Janet and have known her well ever since then. And what a lot of people don't realize about him is that he was a great athlete. He was the multiple-time Indiana downhill slalom ski champion. And he had a nickname. One time, a professor with an accent was going through the roll call for the class. And they didn't all keep attendance, but this guy did. And Jeff and I are sitting beside each other, and we hear this as he's going through the alphabetical list, I think. He goes, Yepri Bidonner? And he looks around, and we're kind of looking around, you know, because there's this pause and nobody's raising their hand. And he goes, Yepri Bidonner. Yepri Bidonner. And all of a sudden, something clicks in my head. He's saying Jeffrey Byron Donor. He's saying Jeffrey B. Donor. And I go, Jeffrey B. Donor. And I'm not kidding you, Kelsey. From that moment on, he was Jeffrey B. Donor. Whenever I buzzed him on the intercom, and whenever I called him on the cell phone, whenever I saw him for the first time of the workday, Jeffrey B. Donor. Or be serious. Jeffrey B. Donor. It was hilarious. When we were allowed to team up for projects, we were always together because Jeff, he was just everything I wasn't. Make your ambition to live a quiet life. At that time in my life, I wasn't doing that at all. I remember that we did we got to, for our final project at IPFW, we got to look at a company and decide as a group what it should do for its future. And we got the company Sohio, Standard Oil Corporation, I think, of Ohio. And they were merging with British Petroleum. And we said it would never work in the United States to name an oil company BP when Sohio was like Ohio and American and all that kind of stuff. And we were wrong. But Jeff, I was going to say, Jeff was even there with his Diet Coke at our presentation. But you know, Jeff was one of the most peaceful human beings I ever knew, by far. And it's interesting that Jesus was peaceful. John 16:33, Jesus said, you know, take heart, I've overcome the world. I'm bringing you peace, a peace that you don't understand. It's not he's probably referencing the Pax Romanus, the power, the peace that comes from the power of Rome. He said, I'm not talking about that at all, in essence, is what he's saying. He said, I'm talking about a peace from the inside out, two being reconciled as one. God with man, man with God, and man with man. And it comes in the heart. And Ephesians 2:14, Paul says that Jesus Christ is the peace of God. So, you know, if anybody's watching today, I think for you and for me as well, we got to ask ourselves, you know, well, what about me? Am I peaceful? Would those around me say I'm characterized and known as peaceful? Do I make it my ambition to lead a quiet life, one that's peaceful? Well, Jeff was not only peaceful, he was faithful. Paul goes on to say in 1 Thessalonians 4:11, you should mind your own business. You should just tweet that out today, Kelsey. You should mind your own business. Hashtag 1 Thessalonians 4:11. And work with your hands just as we told you. You know, this is a picture of being diligent, faithful. When Jeff and I graduated, I had already started a new corporation, and I was trying to restore my family's auction business. And Jeff had looked around and interviewed a lot of different places, and back then, you would be shocked at what people would earn in a normal year for a wage, you know, to working for a company. And I started thinking about what Jeff was going to work for, and because we were staying in touch and talking. And I got to thinking, man, for that, I ought to have him here. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and he said, Tony Holman, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, he worked with all his friends, and no day was ever work. It was all fun, you know. Whenever Dad wants to sell you on something, he sells you on what it is at that particular moment. So we talked, and, you know, I hired him because he was everything, again, I wasn't. He was everything I wasn't. You know, he was peaceful. He was diligent and faithful. And I'm kind of looking at what's the next deal and what am I going to do that's big. But we began quite a run. It was really interesting. And I'm given sort of a marketplace analogy for all of this because Jeff and I worked together in the marketplace.
Right.
But we had the first real estate auction ever broadcast live on television via satellite. We had the first real estate auction broadcast live on the internet. Do you know how well I would do at handling the satellite or the internet connections and things like that?
Yes.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen. We had the first collector car auction broadcast live on the internet, the first one broadcast on cable television, and it was the highest rated show on the Financial News Network, on CNBC, and on ESPN2 every time it ran. We would do the celebrity car auction live at Auburn, and it just would generate so much interest. We did real estate auctions. We auctioned Marina City. I think at that time would have been the largest dollar volume real estate auction ever. Those are those round towers in Chicago. We auctioned a Florida island to Mr. Kohler. You see Kohler in bathroom fixtures all over the place. They got awesome commercials and stuff. He actually bid by telephone and bought an island for $1 million that we auctioned live on satellite. He was watching on TV. Jeff had technical knowledge.
Praise the Lord for people like that. I majored in broadcasting, and it's so, I can't tell you how many times I have to call up this one kid who is really good at all this technological stuff, and he like helps all of us through it all the time because I'm technologically challenged, so I just love people like that.
I am too, and Jeff was that kid. A girl I went to high school with and worked with us for a while said that Jeff was our engineer and everybody could count on him. But it wasn't always easy. We talk about this idea of being faithful, being diligent. I remember when we were struggling with whether or not we could pay our bills, and Jeff willingly sacrificed during our difficult times, and it was a symbol of his faithfulness. We worked together daily. We traveled the globe. We had more fun than anyone should have in business. We gained weight together. Competing on who could eat the pizza at the most consecutive meals in a row. He would always win because he would eat it for breakfast and I would not.
Oh my goodness.
We lost weight together. We'd play racquetball, and I think he always let me win for job security. His faithfulness, his calm, steady, peaceful demeanor with a careful attention to detail was a key to our business success. And the more I reflected on that, the more I realized that, and I don't think I ever showed enough appreciation for it. But there's a whole another side to the story. Jeff listened to the entire New Testament during his 25-minute commute to and from work multiple times. Wow. In his red Porsche 944. He participated in a weekly Bible study at his church. We started a daily stand-up voluntary management team meetings where we would share our goals for the week along with any concerns, and we would pray. Stewie, my brother, led us in a weekly Bible study, and we were challenged and equipped to grow in our faith. Jeff actually inspired me to grow closer to Christ, and as we made our business and ministry, and Jeff's inspiration that he gave me made me a better dad for you. I can't tell you how much of what you ended up experiencing from me as a result of his friendship. I had no idea that eBay was watching our live auctions that he put on the web, and and we eventually sold to eBay. And Jeff actually made it longer than I did, and it was my company. Jeff stayed another 7 years, just shy of 20 years with Kruse International. And I remember when he actually came to our house and set up the computer in our house, talking about technological people, so I could enroll in seminary. As I thought about all this and was unpacking this verse and thinking about Jeff, I realized that Jesus was faithful, John 17:4. And I really believe that on that instant, he collapsed physically on this side, dying. That instantly, he was before Christ in his spirit. And Christ was saying, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And so if anybody's watching and contemplating this, and then also for you and for me, we got to say, how am I doing on the faithful front? Am I diligent? Am I being faithful to what God has called me to do now? And how would you process that at this point in your life?
Well, as you were saying this, I thought of the analogy that I've heard several times of someone using an axe to chop down a tree, and how you're going at it, and people have talked about how people might quit, but really they had one more swing and the whole tree was coming down. And to me, it seems like, from what you're saying, that Jeff was the kind of guy who wasn't ever going to stop swinging when it got hard, and that he would, even if within your business you said, things got tough, but he made sacrifices himself because he believed in what you guys could do. And so I think about that, he would take that last swing until the tree fell down.
Yeah, that's really good. I'd want to take the first swing or the last swing, but he would take every swing in between. I mean, that's the difference between us, and it's not right. What I'm saying about me is not right. Well, Jeff was peaceful. Christ is peaceful. He's the peace of God. Jeff was faithful. Christ is faithful. And Jeff was trustworthy. 1 Thessalonians 4:12 says, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. Everybody loved and respected my buddy Jeff, and you heard that so much as people were starting to talk about his life. He was trustworthy. I got to tell you this, Kelsey. There's only probably a handful of people that anybody could say in their lives that they've never had a crossword with. I can never remember ever having a crossword with Jeff. Never.
Wow.
Never. And just think about all the intense situations we were in.
Right.
Janet, Mitchell, Marissa, his wife Janet, Mitchell, his son, Marissa, his daughter, Marissa's son, Christopher. When you look at them, it just reminds you of Jeff. You can see Jeff in his children, in his grandchild. And I love Jeff's family. His dad, his mom, his brother, his sister. Jeff always would speak really highly of them. He would speak really highly of his wife. It was so unique, really, in today's culture. He spoke so highly of his son, so highly of his daughter, so highly of his grandchild. And here's what he did in the last 24 months. He had a grandson, his first grandchild. He worked the BMW Open, which was a golf outing at Crooked Stick in Carmel, and he actually was able to walk on the course and rub shoulders with the world's greatest golfers.
That's awesome.
He experienced tremendous success in the new auction company he was working for in Indianapolis. He flew on the Colts jet with the team to Kansas City for a game against the Chiefs. He had pictures on the field. It was mind-boggling. The company he worked for was a sponsor of the Colts, and so he got to do that. He drove the Mario Andretti IndyCar Experience at 180 miles per hour and was allowed to pass a vehicle on the backstretch. This is all in his last 24 months. He hit a hole-in-one. He started to love golf. He hit a hole-in-one.
Not in putt-putt.
Not in putt-putt. He purchased, this might be an act of worship here, he purchased a 2006 Porsche Cayman S and drove it home from Baltimore. It is gorgeous, beautiful car. This is tough. He played his last round of golf on this side on a Sunday. He had his last day of work on this side on a Monday. And he had his last meal with his family on this side on that Monday night. I remember calling his phone, knowing I would get his voicemail, just to hear his voice one more time. He wasn't just trustworthy. Christ was trustworthy. And God placed everything in his hands, the Bible tells us, John 3:35. Jesus said, so if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property like Jeff was with mine, who will give you property of your own? That's Luke 16:11 and 12. I think each one of us needs to ask, What about me? Am I peaceful? Am I faithful? Am I trustworthy? What would others say about me? What would those closest say to me? In fact, it reminds me that we really should shift our whole definition of success to those who know me best, love and respect me the most. And so, see, it really wasn't Jeff I was drawn to. It was Christ in Jeff. Christ in Jeff was peaceful, faithful, and trustworthy. And 1 Timothy 1:1, Paul writes, Christ is our only hope. Our only hope. And in Romans 15:13, he wrote, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. In the loud world of auctions, Jeff made it his ambition to live a quiet life. And I made a decision that I'm going to do the same. I want to pass that along to you, and that maybe have you memorized 1 Thessalonians 4:11 and 12, and you make it your ambition to live a quiet life, to be peaceful, faithful, and trustworthy. Thanks for being with me today, Kelsey.
Thank you for having me.
I invite you to draw a line in the sand and put a stake in the ground and fully surrender your heart and life to him today. And if you just pray the simple prayer, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I confess my sin to you. I surrender my life to you as Savior and Lord. He will come in and make you new. And you will begin a new journey, a new race, where you will surrender the new pieces that you find that are a little bit old and rusty, and you need to let those go. And that you surrender your new life, new tragedies, new triumphs. In the triumphs, you give credit to the one who made you new. And in the tragedies, you use those as an opportunity to go back to the one who makes you new. If you've surrendered your life to Christ, I invite you to email us today at info@mitchkruse.com and share your story of restoration with us.